Let's go! Not over.
And that's what you need, man. That's what we all want. From Long John Silver to Perseus to Neo to Walter White. We love watching people grow, change, struggle. Good people, bad people, we don't care. We want to see it, man. We need entertainment and we need it now. And when you watch wrestling, that's what you get. Now, don't get me wrong. A lot of wrestling sucks. But when it's good, it's fucking great. Wrestling is melodrama. Wrestling is mythology. Wrestling is action. Wrestling is comic books. The only thing wrestling isn't is wrestling.
Hey, everybody. It's Keith Gleason from Indie Comics Relay back with another exciting episode this week. With me, as always, is Johnny C., my good co-host and friend and creator of Sartana. How's it going, Johnny?
It's Wednesday, so you know what that means.
Hell yeah, man.
And
go ahead.
We're doing a very special episode, a back-to-back episode, actually.
Yeah, and the funny thing is it was not planned at all, which it kind of came together organically in a weird way. Like, we scheduled tonight's guests like months ago, and then last week I think you got Dirk to be on tomorrow night, and just so happens he has a wrestling related project, which is so it's like a battle of
battle royal of wrestling.
Battle royale.
Yeah, and
Exactly.
I thought just that Max Landis, in kind of like doing some research. Max Landis, if people don't know, he's the son of acclaimed director John Landis. I met him at San Diego Comic-Con a couple years back. And, he also worked for WWE for a little bit. And, he wrote American Ultra, a bunch of Chronicle he wrote. And he also worked in the WWE scripting, wrestling stories and stuff. So I felt that video he did about wrestling is very true. And everything he said is very accurate. It's, it's adjacent to comic books, which what we're all about, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And that's exactly what tonight's guest is all about, too.
Hell yeah. And before we bring our guest on, let's say hello to the chat real quick. We got with us tonight my wife, of course, doing links. So there's a link to follow. You guys can check out tonight. We'll be throwing up these links throughout the episode. We got Ara with us tonight. Hey, Ara, good to see you, buddy. Roland's with us. Yeah, boy. It's good to see you, man. Who else? We got Sky Basler with us tonight. Coming from Fitchburg, Mass. Got Adam Warlock with us tonight. Awesome. Yeah,
what you gonna do?
Harry's with us tonight. What's up, Harry? WWF.
Up,
awesome.
Harry?
Everyone's getting into the spirit of tonight's episode.
Yeah.
We got.
When you mentioned it originally, Keith, I was saying, like, I think there's like a resurgence of wrestling. Like, even me personally, like, I hadn't watched wrestling in maybe 20 years. And then all of a sudden this federation AEW started up. And then I caught it on actually, honestly, it was through Brian Lafferty, who I do the Battle Wounds podcast with. He was talking about AEW, and then they started up on TNT September of 2019, which was perfect because it was right before the pandemic. Okay. So AEW kind of helped carry me through the pandemic a little bit too, which was nice. And it helped me recapture my love of professional wrestling.
I haven't rekindled my love of it yet, but like all this, reading this comic and then just tomorrow's episodes kind of got me thinking like maybe I should get back into it,
Yeah, for sure.
I've been excited about it. So without further ado, let's bring on our guests that we have with us tonight. First off, we got Ed. Is it Kuenel? Is that how you say it, Ed?
Kuenel. Yeah.
Kuenel. All right. Awesome. And then we also got with us Matt Entin. Hey, Matt. Thanks for joining us.
Of the two, if you're into wrestling, you can kind of tell that Matt's the high-flying, like agile guy, and I'm more like Hawk. I'm just like the big beefy. So we're a good combination.
It's like Luther and Serpentico.
Yeah. It's like the Heart Foundation. He's the handsome kind of high flyer. It's like the Heart Foundation all as well.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I'm an 80s wrestling fan. Like for me growing up, I loved it. And then I think the death nail for me was like when the Undertaker came on the scene. That was like when I pulled out Doink the Clown and all those guys. I was kind of like out,
He saw the gobbledygooker and he was like, "What the fuck is this shit? I'm out."
The second best moment in all of wrestling history. It's only the Shockmaster.
Awesome. And the reason you guys you had reached out to me, you guys put out this comic that's I read all 6 issues this past weekend, and I thought it was fantastic. Like it's for those curious about it, it's a comic book called Invasion from Planet WrestleTopia, and it's just, oh my god, it's got a great premise. Yeah, let me pop you up big there, Ed. Hang on one sec. Yeah, look at that cover. That's number 2. That's awesome. 2 worlds enter, 1 leaves. I love it. Such get the spirit of wrestling in it. I love it. And like I've always said, even when I was younger, that like wrestling and comics just go together so well, because to me, wrestling back in the 80s, and I'm guessing even now today, it always felt like it was a live action comic book.
Yeah.
They had these storylines, and then like to resolve them, they came together in the ring for the big fight. I mean, every comic was like that, back in, the 80s. Now it's a little talky with comics, but,
it's good versus
even with wrestling.
Yeah, right.
Good versus evil, yeah. Masks, breathing fire, giants, little people, wrestlers with dwarfism, taking a beating, and they keep fighting, and it was amazing because it was like sports, only scripted.
Right.
So you could potentially achieve the perfect ending to
sports is scripted, Ed.
Oh,
yeah, but like a good story, they built up the drama so that when these two guys, whoever it was, faced off, it was like you had real stakes involved, and you really wanted to see how it was going to turn out. What were you going to say, Johnny?
I was just going to say it's set up a lot like comics, especially nowadays, because what they're doing is they're trying to, sell buys for the pay-per-views and for events, right? So much like comics, where it's like you have all the feuds building up to the main event, right? Yeah. It's like crossover in comics. It's like, the X-Men are doing this and the Avengers are doing this, and all of a sudden X-Men versus Avengers. It's kind of in the same realm. They're very adjacent to one another.
Yeah, I agree.
I missed. You reminded me. I kind of like. I grew up. So I was born and raised in Portland, and we had an NWA territory here, called Pacific Northwest Wrestling, where it was part of the NWA. Umbrella. Like every once in a blue moon, Ric Flair would come out to defend the belt against like a local guy. But you'd watch them every Saturday, and it was like there was no pay-per-view. But what I really missed was they would somehow work. The wrestlers were made to work the schedule into their rants. So like Playboy Buddy Rose would be up there and be like, "Billy Jack Haynes, you and I." Oh, sorry.
No worries. Billy Jack will call you right now.
Yeah, wasn't it Billy Jack himself?
Yeah. Billy Rose never got a phone call during a promo. He would he would go, "Billy Jack Haynes, you and I were going to see each other in Corvallis, and I'm going to take care of you on Wednesday night, and then Thursday night we're going to be in Salem at the Armory, and I'm really good at and then Friday night you and me in Woodburn Bay." So they'd have to work like the dates into the promo. And
it's almost like a radio station DJ having to work in, certain things.
I love that.
You have to give basically to work the schedule into your promo. And then the other, I'm sorry, this is off topic, but like the other awesome thing is we had this, the sponsor was this like appliance king, like Tom Peterson. He was like the local the appliance king, right? And he would be at every Saturday night, he'd be at, the matches for Pacific Northwest Wrestling, and he'd have his own little space right next to where the interviews were being given.
Okay.
And so that, during the show, they'd cut to him and he'd be like, "I've got this Zenith 19-inch black and white television for $195. And you come on into Tom Peterson's," and he'd be selling like, toasters and stuff. I'm not kidding you. This happened regularly. Like Playboy Buddy Rose would be giving an interview. Billy Jack Haynes would show up all pissed off. They'd start fighting, and it would spill into Tom Peterson's little like area, and they would be like slamming each. So the announcer would be like, "Oh my God, Playboy Buddy Rose just slammed Billy Jack's head into that 19-inch black and white Zenith television that's on sale at Tom Peterson's for $195 from now until Tuesday. I can't." They would work in his broad tail into like the action of the match.
Oh, I love it. I love shit like that.
and I guess to have that make sense, like now all they need to do is talk up the next pay-per-view, right? Like, they don't worry about appliances or something.
No, that's awesome. I love stuff like that. We did, because up here in Massachusetts, Johnny, did you ever go to a wrestling show?
Actually, I did. So
yeah, I went when I was younger, and it was just it was just a spectacle. There wasn't any of that stuff,
Yeah, I remember going like to the old school ones at the Garden here in Boston and seeing WWF house shows and stuff. And then I kind of like we all fall out of it and we go back in, and some people come back and some people don't. Then later on in like my later teens, early college, that's kind of when like ECW got big, but not like big national, more like they were kind of touring the area. And I think those were some of the best shows I saw. because it's like I was seeing things that, are completely bananas. Like I saw Spike Dudley jump 30 feet from a balcony into a ring at an IBFW hall in Waltham, Mass. Like it's just craziness.
Wow.
Things that I was at there's the mass transit event. And they talk about New Jack, like basically murdering this kid in a ring in Revere, Mass. And I go to those shows. I wasn't at that one specifically, but I was at a lot of those where things were just wild. And it was the wild, wild west of professional wrestling at one point, where hardcore and blood was all the rage.
Yeah, that's awesome.
How do wrestlers even walk away from
I know, right?
one match? Like one, how do they wrestle 300 times a year? I don't even understand how they do it once.
Yeah, right. Like, and not be like crippled for like 2 months,
I trip and fall. I bruise my knee. I'm like limping for days. These guys are going right back out there. It's unbelievable.
Like crazy. Yeah. So let's take a step back for a second. Like, I'm curious how you guys got to got to the point of making this comic. Did you guys grow? I know you also write for video games, correct? As well.
Very cool.
Yeah, I saw that in the on your bios. So how did you guys? So have you guys always wanted to Did you grow up with comics? Is there comics that put you on this path that you loved when you were growing up, or has it always been wrestling or games?
I'll let Matt talk for a while.
Okay. Yeah. We'll go one at a time.
No, it's So I've been reading comics since I was a kid.
Okay.
Marvel Comics was actually the theme of my bar mitzvah.
Was it really?
Yes.
And
That's awesome.
Marvel is everywhere now. It was really not cool to like comics when I was 13 years old. This is 1992.
Yeah, it didn't get cool until about 2000. 2010, I think.
Yeah, until like it just became sort of like mass pop culture. So my uncle actually worked in a comic shop, so I started reading when I was about 10 or 11, and have been reading pretty regularly since. And then wrestling, I've been watching since about 1985 or so. So I would have been about 5 years old when I started watching, and I watched
with it.
Yeah, and I've fallen off in the last 15 or so years, but I watched it pretty consistently from the rock and wrestling era through the new generation, through the Attitude Era, and then sort of like through the tail end of the Attitude Era is where I kind of fell off. But I don't really watch any of the pay-per-views anymore or any of the shows, but I've of course been watching Dark Side of the Ring, and like anytime there's just like any wrestling related documentary, I watch that.
Same. I'm still fascinated by that stuff. And like I was saying to you guys earlier, I fell out of wrestling back when The Undertaker came in on the scene. But I still look back fondly at that era, and really whenever, a conversation comes up, you could just, geek out about all the different wrestlers and everything from that time period. I'm assuming you could still do that now with like the certain wrestlers that they have and everything. But yeah, no, it's just something about. I remember when they used to do like the pay-per-views, and there was like SummerSlam and all that stuff, and WrestleMania, and you would go rent the old gigantic clamshell like VHSs, and they had every single one. It was like great stuff back then. I mean, the WrestleManias lasted for hours. It was so good. That was such a great time.
Yeah, I mean, the only way I saw them was on VHS because my parents wouldn't let me shell like $40 to like see it live, so I had to wait till it showed up at like the the VHS store and rent it.
Yeah, definitely. We got some comments here. Let me see. They're all in wheelchairs now. ECW destroyed a lot of kitchen appliances.
Well, Harry brings up Macho Man. That is Matt's all-time favorite. That's right. He was
Bonesaw.
Yeah.
Bonesaw. Macho Man, who actually got bit by a cobra live on TV. Started us all as children.
Joining us.
Was that Jake the Snake that did that to him?
Jake the Snake did that. Yeah, that was actually a really cool Dark Side of the Ring too when they talked about that.
So one of my
Hosen versus the Warrior. Yeah, you're right, Edwin. Yeah, totally agree with that. That was such a great. Nice!
Look at that, very cool.
Nice, very cool. Yeah, he used to come around to Rhode Island around here, and I saw him. I don't know, maybe about 5 years ago at the Rhode Island Comic Con. He was looking a little rough, but it was still cool to see him. You know,
yeah,
he was one of the greats. You know, and like.
Oh, Beware!
Yes, Coco Beware is awesome. How about you, Ed? Like, what's your history with comics and
I'm a little older. I'm a little older than Matt, and so, like I said, I discovered wrestling in the late '70s, and I would have been like 7.
Okay.
Because it was on a local channel before cable even, as I'm sure you remember. But we had the local wrestling, so it was on a local channel. It was an independent station for whatever reason. They weren't affiliated with the network, but they had local wrestling, and I was obsessed with it until 13 or 14. And I think part of it was, at 7 years old, you're watching this, and you're all in. At 7 years old, you're like, there's no part of this that's scripted or choreographed. These are real people fighting. Oh my God. And then they really get you. And I really dug comic books, but I think it was just, wrestling was on television. And my dad was one of the first people on the block to get cable. My dad was just obsessed with he wanted cable. So all of a sudden you're watching 3 hours of Georgia Championship Wrestling on Saturdays. Ric Flair, Dusty Rhodes, a little bit of AWA on ESPN when they had nothing to show. They had no programming, so they would put AWA on. And then WWF, as it was called at the time, came on the scene. And I dug comic books, but just not anywhere to the extent. Like I once had an entire wall in my bedroom covered in not big posters, but like clippings from wrestling magazines.
Oh yeah.
You could go to mini posters. You could go. Southwest Portland, there was no comic book store, but at every convenience store, you could buy your comic books, Marvel, DC, and even later, I want to say a few image books just at your local. It's like 7-Eleven, and wrestling magazines. I'd get every wrestling magazine, and I'd get comic books. And then kind of drifted away from them around, high school for sure. Not completely and totally. Like I would always have a graphic novel or two that I'd buy. I might check in with wrestling. I have an enormous amount of affection for it, and that's why part of the reason why Matt and I made Invasion of Planet WrestleTopia. And also, we do keep up with it. We don't, neither Matt and I really watch it, but we kind of keep up with it on. But another way that, or one way that I am still fascinated with wrestling is all the books, all the shoot interviews and the books and behind the scenes stuff is fascinating to me. We did a ton of research for the comic book, but even now I'm reading Gorgeous George's biography because it's absolutely fascinating to me to read that stuff. And and weirdly enough, creating this comic book pulled me back in, not really to wrestling, but to comic books. It's like, well, okay, we're making a comic book. Let's see what all the people who are actually good at this do it. And I started, filling in the gaps, like coming in late to Astro City or coming in late to other like big, graphic novels or comics that everyone's read already. And now I have a pull list again at my local, and I regularly, I regularly read comics again, and it's really fun. It's really cool. And it's like, well, I have a job and I actually have money. Like I can actually.
And it must be great too, because you have all this stuff to catch up on, all the greats. It's like, what's up?
Yeah. Well, I was saying, I try not to go to the guy Ron at my local. I try to buy from him, so I try not to lean too hard on like Comixology. Mm-hmm. I try to support him and get stuff in print. So I haven't opened turned on the fire hose necessarily, but I will buy stuff from him, and I will occasionally on Comixology. Like I said, I read a ton of Astro City because it was there and it was cool. So yeah, but yeah, it is right. Like it's kind of, there's a ton of great stuff I've never read. So, but it's really nice to be pulled back in to the comic book stuff, and wrestling's again. I don't watch it, but I'm glad it's
there. Yeah, no, it's funny. So, how did you guys come to the to wanting to make a wrestling comic? Was it something that was burning an idea within one of you guys that you kind of came together, like, what if we did this, or where did the spark come from?
Ed sort of had the initial pitch was like, what about like a planet of alien wrestlers and they invade Earth?
I love it.
And I don't know, they put a steel cage around Earth. And that was kind of like, that was sort of all we had.
Yeah.
And then we just sort of riffed, from there. And they're like, oh, what if, there's a wrestler and he cuts a promo and he finds out he thinks he's going to win the championship, but he's not. So he makes his own belt and it's a galactic championship. And then, the satellite signal travels out to space and then this alien civilization intercepts it and, they see it as an act of war.
Yeah.
So it just kind of like, it kind of snowballed from there.
And I love that premise. So everybody that's out there that's watching this, so this wrestler, which I got the vibe it was a cross between Randy Macho Man and like Hulk Hogan. Was that the vibe you guys were going for with Rock and Roll Rory?
Everyone, it's funny, we've been on a lot of podcasts and everyone kind of they see different actual wrestlers in Rory. Yeah. And actually, like Superstar Billy Graham was sort of our main influence.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, and who's kind of a little obscure, probably. Especially like I didn't really know him until we started, getting heavy into research for the series. But the WWE put out a DVD documentary about him around the time we were, writing this was originally a screenplay. So right around the time we were writing the screenplay, they put out his autobiography and a DVD. And he was one of those guys that was kind of a little before his time. He was ahead of his time, never quite got his due. Ventura stole a lot from him. Hogan obviously stole a lot from him.
Oh, okay. So maybe that's where I'm kind of seeing the Hogan.
Yeah. And Rory's kind of that guy. He's sort of like the heel that probably would have been a star during the Attitude Era. But unfortunately, like he's working in a time where they're promoting, like Bob Backlund and Hulk Hogan and the babyfaces.
Yeah, and I love that the comic gets into like kind of like the business side of wrestling too, which I thought was great. But the premise, and I love this for you guys watching. So the premise is this wrestler pissed off, basically, like Matt was saying, cuts this promo where he said that he's the championship of the universe, and that's the radio signal gets out into outer space, and all these wrestlers from this different planet come to Earth wanting to, challenge him because he's, the champion of the universe, and like they said, they put a giant steel cage around the Earth. I love that. But the thing I also loved about the comic is it's got some depth to it. Like Rory is, you care about him. It reminded me of the movie The Wrestler in a lot of ways. I don't know if you guys were inspired by that at all.
We were talking about that the other day, and I mean, I think eventually, I'm sure we were, because I really liked the movie. But we look back at our earliest notes and drafts, and Matt and I have been chewing on the story for a long time, and we just didn't know how to bring it out to the world. And you were asking us, about like how this can be a comic, and a big part of it was just, we work as video game writers, and we work for people, and it's a great job, but we work on our own stories too. And with WrestleTopia, it was like we came up with a story and had different iterations and mediums, and it was like, man, we really just want to put this out into the world and put this out there. And comic books was really the only way to do that successfully. And so that was one of the primary reasons behind it. It's like, we just want to get this comic book out there so that it gets, so the story exists in the world. And some of our earliest work predates that movie. Not by a long time, not by much, but some of our earliest work, we started this before the movie The Wrestler.
Really? Okay.
And still, I'm sure it had some influence because I remember us both watching it. I think we watched it together, and I've seen it a couple times, and I love the movie. It's hard to watch; it's a little depressing, but
it is.
It is.
They're definitely going for that too. You know.
He also
I call that one the Kenny Omega panel right there.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that there's an actual bear as the wrestler.
Yeah. Well, that was the cool thing I loved about the bear, right? Because it's like the story's a little bit about being like overlooked, underappreciated, even being replaced, but still doing the work. And it's like kind of like a joke that like you could be this awesome wrestler, but you could also be replaced by a friggin' bear. You know what I mean? And that's kind of like the idea of wrestling is you could put in the work, but you could be an awesome wrestler, like, but you could still get overlooked or you could still be underappreciated. You know what I mean?
But Johnny,
you see it out there now.
The bear had that special move called Mall of the Wild. I think it was, wasn't it?
Yeah.
that made me that cracked me up.
There were so many little things that.
But I love the artwork too. Like I think the artwork complemented this comic so well. Like it's the artwork reflects I think the style of the story where it's like a little cartoony but a little bit serious too. Like I really think you guys found a good artist to bring this story to life.
Yeah, we the first three again you mentioned it's a 6-book miniseries that I should mention on May 11th the plan is we'll be launching a Kickstarter to put it in print as a trade. Yeah,
that's going to be great. I after reading, you guys sent me PDFs, and I was like, oh, I want a hardback version of this. Yeah. No, that's good. When is that coming? When are you guys going to launch the Kickstarter?
Yeah, May 11th.
May 11th. Okay, so it's right around the corner.
Unless we screw something up, but May 11th. And I think I showed a couple print issues, but we really have never put it in print before. We did this really tiny like print runs of the first 2 issues just to bring it to like conventions and try to show it to people. So this will really be the first time that it's in print, and maybe the only time. Who knows? But yeah, I forget what else I was talking about. But so we had the first 3 issues. We had Dan Scotty as the artist, who's done a lot of cool work for. He does a webcomic now called Lavender Jack, and he's done a lot of. He's a professional who's done some work, for like I think Dark Horse, I think with the Spirit and Boom Comics. Marissa Louise, same thing. The first 3 issues, colors. She's done a lot of work for DC and I think Vault, and the letterer was Dave Lanfear, who's done a million. He's worked for everybody.
He was good too because the sound effects really kind of helped. I think with the wrestling scenes.
We hired professionals to try to make it look great, and they did a fantastic job. And then I should just mention the issues 4 through 6. We had Jason Lewis step in to do the coloring. All the art for 4, 5, and 6 were done by Kendall Goode, who's actually worked on the WWE comics for is it Boom? Boom, that has one.
Yeah.
And then so Jason Lewis stepped in on colors for 5, Geo Butler colors for 5 and 6, and then the lettering for the second half of the series was all done by Slippery Sal, who they all did a fantastic job.
I think like I didn't even notice the art change between the issues. So I think you got a good 2 artists that worked. Like the style didn't really change much between the issues. I didn't think.
Yeah. It was Dan Lavender Jack kind of took off for Dan, and so we're like, oh God, we need to find someone new, and it was actually our editor recommended Kendall. And we saw that he had done work, as Ed said, on the WWE comic for Boom. And yeah, their styles just were kind of simpatico.
Yeah.
Because if we went with someone who was a little more realistic, it would have just been jarring. So we wanted to assure, even though a new artist was taking over midway through the series, that it was as smooth a transition as possible.
Yeah, I think you guys succeeded on that level because I didn't notice reading the issues. I kind of when I was going through the PDFs, I kind of went right through the credits real quick just to get to the story. So I didn't even notice the art change, to be honest with you. So that's great. Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I didn't know what to expect with wrestling comics. Usually wrestling comics are they take a real life wrestler and just do his story or something, and that's usually what you get, or you get those weird WWE ones, but this was really fun. Yeah. Let me take a look. Hang on. Let me pop you up here. Put them up again. Oh yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, Battle Mania. That's
actually it's kind of sad. Steve Ditko did the art in these.
No kidding.
The end of his career.
Wow.
No kidding. Wow.
Yeah.
That's
Can you
cool.
show a page? Yeah, let me see.
Sure. We'll see. This is
this must have been after Speedball.
Bring
Nasty
that up front.
Boys.
Yeah, there we go.
Oh wow.
Wow.
How old is that book?
This is from 91.
No kidding. Wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, so it is after Speedball, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what's the comic, the basic premise of your comic? Did you guys ever read a comic called Proposition Player?
No. What is it?
It's a Vertigo comic. It came out, I don't know, back in early 2000s, and it was the reason it's got a similar premise in the fact that there's somebody that makes this outrageous claim and then causes this whole thing to happen. Which is I guess a proposition player is basically somebody that works in casinos and then goes and sits in on card tables whenever there's not enough people to play blackjack or something but one night in a bar with his friends, he starts talking about souls and metaphysical stuff, and then he bets all of his friends to sell them his soul for by writing their names on napkins and he'll buy him a drink. So all his friends give him his napkins with their names on it, and all of a sudden he becomes this deity. So all heaven and earth and hell come looking for the souls that got sold to him, over this it's really funny. It's a funny book, but it reminded me of that, where somebody just makes this outrageous claim and then causes this whole situation to happen, So,
yeah, it was just we talked about the way Matt described it. It kind of sounds like we were both doing cocaine all night while we were just kind of talking this over. We're like, okay, so there's a planet of wrestling aliens, and it's they don't have elections. They wrestle to see who's in charge and all this stuff. And they're like, well, why would they invade Earth? And so the obvious answer to that would be, well, someone has to cut a promo, right? That really pisses them off. And then there's that wonderful sci-fi cliche of the TV signal going out into space, and
I love that,
getting intercepted. And so that's there was this boast, this claim, this hubris. Which is to say, Rory Landell is kind of screwed out of the world title, I think, as you mentioned. So it's the one-upmanship. I don't care about Earth being the world champion of Earth. Who cares? I am the galactic champion.
I love that.
Except
I love it was the pizza box too, right? The belt. Yeah. And I don't know if it was meant to be, but I felt like it was kind of like a nod to Taz when he had his own FTW belt. He couldn't get the belt on his own, so he made up the FTW one. I was like, I don't know if that's a nod to Taz, but I'll take it that way.
Yes, it's funny because people, there are Easter eggs in the issues, absolutely. But then people will sometimes say oh, I saw that Easter egg of of such and such, that guy in the background with the hat, and he looked at, and we have no idea what they're talking about. We'll just be like,
it was Buff Bagwell.
Oh yeah,
okay.
Yep, that was the one. Yep.
The other thing I loved about this book too is like all the other wrestlers and all the filler stuff you guys put at the end of each issue. I think WWE should buy some of those wrestlers' names and personalities from you guys, like the Boy Scout. I think that'd be a fantastic wrestler. Honestly, like can you see that guy come out and like I don't know, make like a little campfire in the middle of the ring and then throw the guy in it or something? I don't know. I'm just
hardcore campfire match.
Yeah, right.
We're actually, for the Kickstarter, we're physically making those trading cards.
Are you really? Great idea.
Yeah, and that'll be one of the reward tiers.
And you already have all the the stats and everything. It's definitely perfect for it.
We had them redesigned by a designer down in Australia to look like the 1985 Topps WWF cards.
Yeah, that's great. That's fantastic. Cool. That's gonna be awesome. Yeah, definitely tag me and Johnny when you guys launch the Kickstarter on Twitter and everything. We'll definitely retweet that out for you, because I really, like I said, I love the comic, and I'll probably even review it on the channel eventually. I'll review the whole series. I
love the characterization too, because it wasn't like just all the muscle bound guys. Like the Adonis character was like a Gold Dust riff, like it was just, you had a wide variety of characters in that way, and I thought that was awesome. It's not just like the typical muscle bound 80s style. You guys did a little bit of everything, it seemed.
Yeah, the character is great. And Matt gets the credit. I mean, Matt here, I think, wrote all the copy for those trading cards, the trading cards that are in the comic, not actual trading cards, but and I love trading cards. Like I collected those old WWF, as they were back then, cards.
Yeah,
and I appreciate you pointing out like so each of the 6 single issues, which are digital only right now. It's on Amazon Kindle and Comixology, but they do have some exclusive bonus material that won't be in the trade that we kickstart.
Oh, really? Yeah, like would that be like a bonus story or?
So as you pointed out, so each of the 6 single issues have like some really fun, like fictional wrestling interviews, like they were pulled out of an old wrestling magazine, or they have, you can show if you have some handy, you can show it. But like the trading card stuff, each single issue has some really cool exclusive bonus material in it already. When we do the trade will have some cool exclusive back matter as well, but it won't be the same as the single issues. So possibly, there might be, some incentive to check out both, even digitally perhaps. But but both will have its own. Both the single issues and the trade will have some really cool like bonus material stuff. But I love when people point out the single issue bonus material, because it felt like while we were doing it, possibly unnecessary and expensive for no reason, and then when people pointed out, we're like, oh yes, thank you.
At least it connected, right?
Somebody saw it. And part of that is
it connected with me because I love that stuff. So
yeah. Matt did the trading cards, which are probably the best.
I'm gonna see if I could find that.
No,
I definitely want to show people that, because I love that. Do you know what issue that was in?
That would be 3.
3, yeah, that was the
3.
end of 3. But that was all Kelly Sue DeConnick, actually, creator of Bitch Planet, sort of gave us. Yeah, she gave us that. Like Ed, we're not friends with Kelly and Matt Fraction.
But you guys like see him at a show or something?
Yeah. Ed actually lives in Portland, where they live, and their kids go to the same school district.
Oh, okay.
They used to. I mean, it's funny. Portland being a big comic book town now, our kids used to kind of be in the same circles with like activities and things. And I would see. I saw her, and I was like, oh crap. Introduce myself, and being a video game writer, I guess we had something kind of in common. And then saw Matt, just taking my kid to their activity. Saw Matt Fraction. I'm like, oh, I know that. Jesus, I know that guy. Holy crap! And super nice. Like he left. We were there for this activity, and I said hi. And I don't know if he had to go home, for something. I'm assuming he had to go home for something. But real quickly, but he went home, and then when he came back, he gave me like this big pile of autographed like trades and graphic novels that he had written. Like his stuff, like Marvel and his. I mean, I was like, both super nice. And Kelly Sue, I just met her, and she sent me the same thing. She sent me like a really cool Captain Marvel trade that she autographed and gave us some good advice. And but some of it was put in some bonus material. And a lot of that reflects, I think, our love of those wrestling magazines I touched on earlier. And it was fun stuff to do.
Yeah, no, I totally connected with that because I knew exactly what you guys were doing with that. Like it reminded me of what you would see in those old wrestling magazines.
Yeah.
You always got that because I remember collecting those when I was a kid and like just going.
And the best was like they had a heel announcer, or I'm sorry, heel columnist. Like
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, look at this stuff. It's
fantastic. Yeah.
Did you get to this issue
awesome.
yet, Johnny? I mean, come
no,
on, Boy
I
Scout.
flipped through a little bit of it, but I read through the first two issues, but I flipped through a lot of it.
I could see this guy existing in the WWE. Like,
yeah,
I mean, it's just fantastic.
He's like the Mountie.
Yeah, exactly. Like, you could see him like his ring persona. He would like do like Boy Scout oaths and stuff. Like, I'm gonna take out this guy, or
like the shooting squad,
great stuff.
Right.
I mean, Kodiak Jack. I mean,
that's awesome.
So good.
We like the bear from Tekken.
Yeah, and this is the main star of the comic. Rock and Roll Rory and Don Fon Wong. Yeah, this is good stuff. I really connected. I love this too. This was great. They called it stuff like that back in the day.
Matt did that also, and the song titles are great. It's hilarious.
It was
that's right.
Like Michael P.S. Hayes of the Fabulous Freebirds came out with an album in the early 80s. Terrible as you'd imagine.
That's and here's the thing. Actually, I remember. So I was probably still a little bit into wrestling at 14 because I remember as a freshman in high school, I bought that album. I bought Bad Street USA. It was like a 35, but it came with all this like crap. But he had his hit single, Bad Street USA, on the 35. It was not good. I bought
I noticed that you guys actually have SBI Industries as your publisher. That's Starburn Industries. Now, when I hear that, I think Dan Harmon and Community. Is that in and of the
Rick
same?
And Morty too, right?
Yeah. So we
as I was just going to say, as professional creatives, what brought this book to that company?
So they were our publisher for a time, and what happened was, we approached them originally. They were just starting to get into comics, and they were looking, for kind of humorous stuff. And we thought, okay, maybe we'll be a really good match. And so we were for a time being published by them, but the Starburn Industries Press had, it's been real rough for the comic book industry, as I'm sure you well know, being comic book creators. And after a couple of years, we were like, we had a very amicable parting. We're like, I don't think we're helping each other all that much. Let's go our separate ways. And so we just returned to self-publishing, which, in all fairness, is probably what we should have been doing. We should have been doing what you guys do, which is, just self-publish and do your own thing, because it's I'm sure it's a lot more work, but it's far more satisfying.
It's a lot more work. Now, did they like? I don't know what their publishing deals are like. So, like, I'm with Alterna right now.
Okay.
And it's a lot like Image, where they all they are is they publish the book, and I own the characters and the concepts and everything. They have no piece in that. Is that the same kind of deal you guys had with SBI?
Yeah.
Okay.
It was the same kind of deal. So, we were doing, all the promotion, and Matt and I funded this, and that was the expectation that when you're creator owned, obviously, then you own the IP, but so you don't, we did the financing, and we did most of the promotion, and Starburn Industries is great. It just, and they're sweethearts and good people to work with, but it was just like we just got to a point where we just weren't helping each other anymore.
Sure.
Yeah, I get that.
We're like,
was that like the book? It kind of matches the tone of some of the other stuff they put out. Like, I was reading this thinking like this is like a comic book Abed from Community would write about wrestling. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, right.
And I kind of got that vibe from it. I love that though. Like,
I could even see it as like an Adult Swim kind of cartoon, which is what those guys kind of do, right? Like, part of that.
We briefly, I think if like we go back in our hard drive, we did do like an animated series pitch for Invasion from Planet WrestleTopia because it felt so, of a kind with Adult Swim. But like stylistically, we just like this fit very comfortably with like the Starburns, sort of style of storytelling. But they kind of started up at like a weird time in the pandemic. They're just sort of getting like starting to assemble a stable, and then the pandemic hits, and it hit the industry really hard. And it was great working with them. It was nice because like Dan Harmon and Dino Stamatopoulos's sort of stamp of approval.
That's
gave
cool.
us a sort of like an air of legitimacy.
Yeah, like a boost, right?
But great. Now that we've sort of gone into the Kickstarter phase, we're like, you know what? Like, this has been fun, but we're going to kind of take the last leg of this journey on our own.
Yeah, I find, even my publisher, Alterna, they're starting to work with with crowdfunders being part of their business strategy going forward now. And it's like, I think that's the future of comics, because it's just going to be, as much as, stores are great and everything, there's a lot of people that don't have stores near them because so many have gone out now. And the only way they can get comics is through like Indiegogo or Kickstarter,
Kickstarter becomes the indie creators pre-order system essentially.
But you get that creative thing where it's like, well, if you're with a publisher, it can get me in stores, and like that becomes like a thing, and
we may still we're trying to work this out, but we may for our Kickstarter we will have a Kickstarter exclusive edition for people who want that. It'll be a hardcover. And we'll have a soft cover. Then we'll have a soft cover, which will let everyone know that it will maybe be in stores also afterwards. Thanks to Industries Press, I think we might still work with them on distribution.
There you go. And then, like, because any independent comic you're already up against the grain anyway. So, 50% of the comic stores won't get anything but Marvel and DC, and you're lucky if they get a few Image titles. So those stores it won't work with, but the bigger stores, the ones in the major cities like Midtown and stuff, like they get everything. So it's like always cool to just be in Diamond or with a publisher for that reason, because you'll be in the major stores.
And Starburns they are also like crowdfunding all of their trade paperbacks.
Are they really? Okay.
Yeah. They initially did, I think, like Halicious and maybe one other title as trades, but moving forward, as far as I know, they're crowdfunding as well. It's just sort of how
it's part
how
of
the business is turning, unless you're Marvel, DC, Image, or Dark Horse. That's kind of
well. I mean, like even Boom Studios is doing it. I mean, they had the biggest Kickstarter ever with that Keanu Reeves comic, and it's like, you know, it's like I know that pisses off a lot of like indie creators, but it's like, come on, it's like,
yeah,
you know,
I do hope that you know, and some people pointed out, they're like, hey, you know, this could be a good thing. It just pulls people in, and you know, hopefully that's true, and that could be the case, I guess. You know, I mean, just
it's like a 50-50 thing, like, because like I just want to say to those indie creators that, like, you know, that money probably wasn't going to you. I mean, they're there for Keanu Reeves, so it's like, all that money wasn't magically going to go into your pockets, you know. But
that guy's so nice. Why can't we rag on him?
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Well, I mean, the cool thing about WrestleTopia too, though, is that you guys have two specific individual niche audiences that, you know, have somewhat of a Venn diagram kind of crossover, but you've got two different communities where a wrestling fan who may not pick up a comic book might be might consider doing it, and vice versa, you know.
Yeah, I mean, like,
I think that's very cool.
And the communities go hand in hand, I think. Wrestling community and comic communities. I mean, we have a guest tomorrow night that's kickstarting a comic about Tony Schiavone. Is that how you say his name? Tony Schiavone? Is that how you say
Tony
it?
Schiavone, yeah.
But they're doing like a Kickstarter right now about his autobiography. It's a graphic novel. And that thing's over like 100,000. I just checked it yesterday. I was like, wow, you know. So there's an audience there. You know?
I mean, and he's the current. I think I want to say, well, the current voice or one of the voices of AEW.
Yeah,
that's correct. Yeah,
and I mean, I used to listen to him all the time. Again, I mentioned Georgia Championship Wrestling. Saturdays was 3 hours of Ric Flair and Dusty Rhodes and the Road Warriors.
Good stuff. Yeah.
He was. I want to. There was Gordy Sully, but I want to say it was him. Maybe later on, as well. He was maybe at least for a time the voice. I mean, he's and he's with the WWE. So, but it's been interesting to send this comic out to like strictly like comic book critics or podcasters or reviewers. I mean, kind of like yourselves. I mean, I guess I would think of you guys more as comic book people, at least on the surface. And then there's a ton of wrestling podcasts, and it's been, the response has been really great. But it's also been interesting where you'll have just comic book people, and someone will be like, "Oh, yes, I love wrestling," and some of them are like, "Oh, I used to love wrestling when I was a kid," and some of them are like, "Well, I don't know, I'll give it," and give it a look, and they really enjoy it, and they have said. Which thrills us, but they have said, you don't have to be a wrestling fan to necessarily really.
I agree with that. I think 100%. It helps that if you grew up with it, but I think when you guys pitch this book, I would play up that element, because people's expectations of a wrestling comic is probably, it's an autobiography or something, like something like that, or. Yeah, exactly.
Or something like that. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And I think people would really miss out on what you guys put together here, because I really enjoyed it for the nostalgia effect, and also I think it's just a well-told story.
Funny, heartfelt, over the top, in the appropriate times,
and get a lot of depth.
Yeah, it's wrestling. It's wrestling for everything that you watch wrestling for, but also in just like the comic format. And you guys played to the comic book format very well, too. You got your pacing page-wise down pat. The twists come at the right times. It's such a wonderfully composed story, and I just I think everybody should just take a moment to check it out and pick it up.
Absolutely, they should. Yes,
thanks. Yeah, a lot of credit due to our artists who kind of held our hand sort of through this whole process, because this is a completely
because this is your first comic, right?
Yeah. So both Dan and Kendall helped out a lot.
Yes.
Respect. You guys knocked it out of the park.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. I when I read it, I felt like you guys were doing it for 15 years, at least, or what I mean? Like, it didn't feel like a first time comic book, it really.
For sure.
Everything was natural.
I mean, I think the video game experience of working with artists in that respect helped. And then, like Matt said, we did try to do as much homework as we could, learning from comic book writers and people. And then, as Matt made a great point there, it's like we hired professionals, and we were pretty open to saying, look, just please tell us when we're asking for something really stupid, like a double page spread where two people fight each other while going down a water slide, which is an issue for.
Yeah.
And it's a big pain in the ass. I wish we had kind of wished out.
Well, I figured the artists would have more problems with you guys if you wanted to a really detailed audience, like stuff that's like crazy like that,
It was one thing I thought and then digitally, like, it doesn't look right at all because you can't, like, digitally you don't really get a double page spread usually unless you're looking at it just the perfect.
That's why physical is really still great for that reason, just to see that. The other thing I wanted to touch upon with you guys too, how did you guys meet? Where did you guys meet in the video game industry? Were you always friends or?
Yeah, both of our first jobs in the video game industry was with a developer in the Chicago suburbs called High Voltage.
Okay.
And we were both writing actually on Leisure Suit Larry.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, which was like the relaunch.
Man, I remember those dirty games.
I remember that.
So when they relaunched it with Larry's nephew, Larry Lovage.
Oh, I remember that.
Yeah,
okay.
Xbox, PS2, and PC.
Yeah.
So that was like my first job out of college.
No kidding. That's awesome.
Ed had previously worked as a producer, but they recognized that, he was a funny guy who had some writing talent. So they transitioned him into like a writing role.
Mm-hmm.
And then Ed had a picture of himself with King Kong Bundy. And he had an autographed photo of, he's probably got an autographed photo of Playboy Buddy Rose. So like that, so, it's kind of like, recognizing a fellow member of a secret club. And that was how we first, got to talking about wrestling.
That's great. Look at that wall of fame.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
And we actually, after we got unfortunately laid off working on the sequel to Leisure Suit Larry Manikumag.
Oh no.
It was around that time we started spitballing what eventually became Invasion for Planet WrestleTopia.
Awesome.
We just we were both unemployed. We had a lot of time on our hands and we liked working together. So we started knocking out screenplays together, while we looked for our next gig.
Awesome. Have you guys done anything with film or TV or movies or anything like that? Or?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Ed.
Well, I was going to say, it might be
it's hard to see.
So we worked on one horror film called Lumberjack Man.
Okay.
And it's great.
That's the poster in the background there?
That's Okay. So it's that there. And I love it's a great horror movie. I wish more people had kind of seen it, but it's an independent film. It's actually got Michael Madsen in it, though. He's the one famous guy that's in there. And it is a slasher film, and it's kind of a horror comedy. And it's got this was not our concept, but Matt and I loved it. It was an undead lumberjack rises from his grave every so often to wreak vengeance on those who stole his pancake recipe. and this was Josh Baer, the director, the guy who funded the whole movie. It was his vision. And in the movie, I kid you not, the lumberjack man drags behind him a giant griddle. And when he kills somebody, he soaks these giant pancakes with their blood, and he'll eat some of the pancake. And,
I love it.
And Matt wrote, I think we had a blast writing this script for Josh Baer. And the way Matt put it, Matt had, I think, maybe my favorite line in the film, which is, At one point, Michael Madsen is the guy trying to stop this undead lumberjack, and he's trying to convince people.
The Dr. Loomis figure.
Yes.
Okay.
Convince people it's real. And
I love it.
He goes, "There's a demon logger out there, and if he finishes his breakfast, he'll be more powerful than anyone could imagine. No force on earth will be able to stop him." If he eats all the pancakes, you got to go see it.
Yeah, that sounds great. I think I would love that movie.
Sounds up my alley for sure.
Lloyd Kaufman of Troma Studios was at the premiere.
Oh, was he really?
Yeah. The director and the producer know Lloyd Kaufman, and they actually paid to fly out to like upstate New York to do a cameo in Return to Nukem High 7 or whatever. I don't like some Troma picture. And also
were they trying for like a deal with Troma or something?
No, it was they wanted to like independently produce it themselves, but it was very much, as you can tell by the absurd premise, kind of like an homage to the Troma style of filmmaking.
Sounds like it, like what the lumberjack man was doing.
Yeah. And oddly, like James Gunn was at the premiere in Austin.
Kidding. Yeah. Well, his first movie was with Troma, right? Tromeo and Juliet.
He's friends with Lloyd Kaufman.
Yeah.
Lloyd Kaufman was in Guardians of the Galaxy.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. Can you see that on like Amazon Prime or something? Or is that
I'm not exactly sure exactly which streaming service, but like I bought it off YouTube and I've streamed it off like my cable company. And I think like some of these like Showtime.
I'd love to see it. I'll have to check that out.
It was on
Showtime
like
a watch party, Keith. That would be 3 fun.
Years.
Was it really awesome?
Yeah.
It was.
That's great.
Yeah.
Now, did you guys like being like a real independent movie? Did you guys make anything off of that? Did you make some money? Nothing, or it was just like a labor of love kind of thing? And
exactly, for Josh Baer, again, the director, the guy who funded it was just his labor of love, and it's a much better, I think, slasher horror comedy that people give it credit for. And it's heartbreaking to me that more people haven't dug it. But
I check it out just because I loved your comic. So
nobody made it.
I would watch it for that.
I think maybe Michael Madsen made a little bit of money, but that was probably about it.
Okay, probably that's where the budget went. That's awesome. And is there any other games that we would know that you guys worked on? Like, is it too many to name, or is it like
we've worked on a lot of games. Matt and I both together worked on one called Valiant Hearts: The Great War.
Oh, I played that. That was that was like an Xbox arcade one, right?
Yeah.
It was like
one.
Yes, I love that game. That was amazing.
Not a comedy, but it was right.
What's that?
Not a comedy for sure.
Yeah, no, not at all. But like storytelling was great. I didn't know that was you guys. That's awesome.
And a great deal of the credit goes to the development team, which was at Ubisoft Montpellier at the time. It was we helped a lot with the story and the dialogue, but it was really it was also that was their vision and their characters, and they brought us in to work on it and help them quite a bit with to make it all gel. But we don't as writers for hire, that's kind of what we do. We work with
jump from project to project kind of thing.
Exactly, their vision, their stories that they need help with, and but yes, you're really we're pretty proud of that one, and it was kind of cool to work on something that was not really a comedy at all, and it still turned out pretty well. Like, it kind of reminds us of maybe we can, as you said in WrestleTopia, there's a little bit of, we wanted to show kind of the human side of these characters.
Yeah, I think that's why despite all the craziness going on in the comic, it really works because of that. I think because you're really gunning for Rory to fight fight this guy for real at the end and like, you know, win the championship, you know?
Yeah.
It's like that Rocky thing going on, you know?
Well, you also call like his home life too. You saw how he grew up, and you're bouncing throughout his timeline a little bit too. So, you know, you get a little bit more, you know, you get his whole kind of story, you know?
Yeah.
And now, go ahead, Ed. I'm sorry.
No, I was just saying, like, yeah, it's tricky to do the timeline hopping. We I think confuse some people. You got to be careful when you
yeah, no, I was able to follow it fine, but there was points where it was like, oh, okay, this is in the past, you know, like, you know, without having to say like 1971 or whatever, you know, whatever year you guys were trying to do. But
that's like a TV or movie trope, but you guys did it well in a comic format, I thought, you know?
Yeah, sorry, go ahead, Matt.
Oh no, yeah, like I think like if we have a style, you know, because we've been working together now for, you know, almost I think around 15 years. It's kind of taking these absolutely like absurd, off the wall premises, but like grounding it in like believable characters. I think like if we like as, you know, creative collective have a calling card, that would sort of be it. Because, you know, it's real tempting to take this absurd premise and just sort of run away with it and just be sort of silly and turn it into, you know, like a Naked Gun sort of airplane style kind of comedy. But I don't think that's like what we do well as writers, really.
No, but I thought it was a success in that field that you guys took that crazy premise and grounded it and made it work, you know. That's why I think it could work as like a cartoon or an animated movie or something, you know. I think it would work on that level, and if people would respond to that, I think, you know. You know, now that you guys had a little taste, I know it's really such a crazy and hard thing to make a comic book. Do you guys have ideas to do more, or do you think you would go back to that well, or?
I think I would love to do both. Like, I guess in my mind, what would be wonderful is if we could launch this Kickstarter for this collected volume of Invasion Planet WrestleTopia, and do maybe just well enough to start to at least start on a different miniseries with a totally different story that we're really excited about, and then maybe we can, you know, kickstart
the next one,
the next, you know, miniseries. And we would like to go back to WrestleTopia. We do have some thoughts and ideas.
Oh, good. So there's a sequel, maybe. And
great. Kodiak Jack.
Other story.
All about Kodiak Jack.
Nice.
Yeah, and some fun ideas, you know, like for some one shots, and then some rough ideas for like a new story, a new story arc. So we'd love to do both.
Awesome.
We'll see what the.
That's where I think Kickstarter would help you guys out too. Like, I think you know, that's what I'm kind of actively doing with my campaigns now. Is like, I just finished the 3 issues now. I'm starting to think about the next 3 issues, and I might, you know, I'll use the crowdfunding to kind of fund that, and then I make a little more money with it once Alterna sells it on their website and stuff. So it's almost like you get a little, you know what I mean? So like, but yeah, like you get the pre-order in and build your audience, and then people will follow you to the next one, which I think this is a smart thing to do, is like do the trade and then, you know, retain all those emails and, you know, start the next one kind of thing, you know.
And like, even if we, you know, so obviously we put a lot of money, as you know, into 6 issues, and I would say like the first issue is like 32 pages. It's the last issue, because we were poor planners, is like 45 pages long or something like that.
Well, that gets easier, because I've been doing that too. Like I did that a lot with my early comics, and it's just like, at the time it was like, I don't care, I just want the story to go, and then you realize like, yeah, but that's going to cost you this much money to make this, you know what I mean? So you start thinking in terms of 22 pages and 24 pages and that kind of
I was
thing,
surprised when I opened up the first issue and I saw it was like 30 pages. I was like, we're getting a little extra bang for my buck here, because most Kickstarters I back nowadays, it's like you got this thin, lean 22-page book. You know what I mean? That you're just trying to be conservative with printing costs.
Yeah, we I think for the first issue we were like, 32 pages. Yeah, let's kick this baby off. And then and then the last issue we're like, oh my god, holy crap, what are we doing?
But you had to do it because you had to end it in style, which was good. Now, did you guys when you were picked up by SBI, did they get this into stores at all for you guys, or was that with the pandemic hit?
Their sort of plan after their initial sort of spate of titles was just to be digital, and then after the digital run, do a trade, and then the trade after the pandemic hit turned into a crowdfunded trade.
Okay.
And we were featured. They did a free comic book for Free Comic Book Day, so they featured us in one of those.
Oh, okay, that's good. That's good exposure.
Yeah. But outside of that, that was basically the only time they physically sort of sent anything WrestleTopia out to stores.
But you guys said that they're open to possibly distributing the trade.
Yeah.
That's good. That's
great
because you get a lot of stores that will do graphic novels and not necessarily buy all the single issues too. So that's actually kind of be a good thing. And I don't know what if they have any reach into like Barnes and Nobles or anything like that, but that could be a possibility too.
Yeah, I don't think those stores.
This is funny. Would win in a fight, Boxer Bear, Kodiak Bear. But I have a Boxing Bear as one of my characters in Mighty Mascots.
we could do a crossover.
Yeah, I know, right? We should talk about that.
I'd read that.
That would be awesome, actually. The premise of my book is they're all serial mascots and brought to life, and they become like sort of like a Justice League of like cereal, I guess, So I have that same kind of thing that you guys got going, where you try to ground it in like sort of such an absurd concept, but you try to ground it. I kind of use like the original Eastman and Laird Turtle issues as sort of like a guiding light on how those guys took an absolutely absurd concept and kind of grounded it, into like something that you'd care about. So I kind of use that as a barometer, I guess. I was pleased, kind of looking at it now, and I was kind of pleased in that I think Rory Landell, the protagonist, and the people around him, they're just trying to get what they want, right? And even like the WrestleTopians who invade Earth, they're just trying to get what they want and do what they think is right and they're owed, and it's funny to me, but it's not funny to them, right? They're just going about their business, right? And I think that's what I like in the story, like you're describing, is they're not trying to amuse us. They could care less. Right. Yep. They're trying to do their thing that they think is important and it's entertaining. Awesome. What's my wife saying? My wife with the stats here. A Kodiak bear is 5 foot tall and weighs 1,500 pounds. A grizzly bear is 3.3 feet tall, weighs 600 pounds. Advantage Kodiak. The Boxer Bear has some sick gloves, so
There's two weight classes.
I love it.
I don't know if they can cut. I don't know if Kodiak can cut weight by 900 pounds.
Oh yeah, definitely. But all right, yeah. So we're a little bit over an hour now, which is we should start to kind of wrap it up here. Did you guys have anything that you wanted to mention, like any where people can check you out, that kind of thing?
Yeah, so we're on all the social medias. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, not really. We're not really active on Instagram, and even Tumblr.
Yeah. You guys were telling me earlier, Tumblr is huge for you guys.
Which is like for whatever reason our largest following. We have.
That's funny.
Yeah, it's like we have like 2,500 followers, which isn't a ton, but like for us, it's something.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, any place you have a following,
Yeah,
that's great. You guys post artwork and things like that. What you're working on.
And a lot
might
of
be a video game influence too, because you guys worked on some great games. So I mean, that could be because isn't the Tumblr crowd sort of like video game heavy audience kind of?
Yeah, we do. We'll do on Saturday. We'll do like a screen. We'll like call out a different wrestling game from video game past. So like we'll do a little like and on Twitter as well. Like we'll do a little kind of tip of the cap.
That's awesome. When you guys do the Kickstarter, definitely play up that angle too. Like mention every hot game you ever worked on in the description. All that stuff. People eat that stuff up. So
yeah,
and it kind of gives you credibility as far as like the comic goes too. So. I think definitely like these guys are working on comics. This is awesome, so definitely play that up. Ed, anything that you wanted to?
Just May 11th, we should be launching the Kickstarter.
Awesome.
We'll have a hardcover exclusive. We'll have a soft cover. We'll have really cool. We talked about the trading cards, which we think will be really, really cool and fun. For people who will come in and trust us with their money. The book is finished. I mean, the books are finished, so it's really just after the Kickstarter campaign, it's just having the graphic designer do a few things, and then we're off to the printer. So hopefully the risk there is pretty low, perceived as pretty low. The covers are done. A lot of it. Almost everything is done. And
you guys gonna do a new cover? New cover for the graphic novel.
The trade, so both the soft cover and the hardcover have their own cover.
Cool. Very cool.
And they're both really, really cool. We had a great artist named Ryan Lang who does a lot of work he started in games, but he works for I think Netflix now and
worked for Disney.
Yeah.
Cool.
Concept artist, and he did a digital painted cover for the paperback trade for us.
Oh, sweet. Awesome.
Yeah.
That's great. Cool. Yeah, I'll be on the lookout for it because I told my audience earlier, definitely check this out. This is a great comic. Like
it is
really fun. Really enjoyed it. If you're a wrestling fan, if you're a comic fan, hell, if you're just a fan of a good story, you'll love this comic. And I really enjoyed the art's great. The lettering's good. It's very, very well done. Johnny, you've read a couple issues. You can agree with that, right?
First two issues I read as a comic fan and a wrestling fan, I loved it. I saw things that may or may not have been there in the book itself, and there's a lot for me to take away from it. I had a long list of notes of things that as I was reading it, little things. I was like, oh, this is really cool on this page and things like that. But it's a wonderful story. I can't wait to read more, and I'm looking forward to the Kickstarter so I can kind of see all the perks and all the cool stuff.
I want to get it in a hardcover because the
hardcover sounds awesome.
I'm more of a physical media kind of reader rather than digital. I'll read digital if I have to, but I'm more of a physical. So I definitely want a copy. I enjoyed it that much. So. And Johnny, do you have anything you want to promote before we head on out?
Well, I just wanted to thank you guys for coming on tonight. We appreciate you taking the time to talk with us. Thank you for sharing this wonderful story with us and the world. I just wanted to close with, we usually sometimes do a fun question. What's everybody's favorite wrestler?
I got to go with Roddy Piper of all time, I think, for me.
Ed already gave mine up.
Yeah,
Macho Man.
Macho Man's great. And I should share it with this. This is my one claim to fame.
Yeah.
Oh man, I have the autograph, but I'll admit I just bought it.
I got to wear it, man. I get to wear this.
Wear the pads. That's dope.
I just bought it because I saw them live, which was awesome. I have it's pretty unoriginal, but I think I got to go with kind of a tie, I guess, with Ric Flair and Dusty Rhodes. Just watching Georgia Championship Wrestling, I saw them wrestle each other in Portland at one of the few like big shows that the local promotion was put on during the 80s, and I remember I actually saw Ric Flair wrestle twice. Once he wrestled a local guy, and the second like big Don Owens extravaganza, he wrestled Dusty Rhodes, and
awesome.
And then just learning about him, it was just like phenomenal how this guy could put on a great show no matter what. He could wrestle like a log, right, and put on a great show.
Yeah.
Number two, he would really spend a lot of the 60 minutes. He'd just get his ass kicked and make the other guy look good, no matter who they are. And then he would kind of sometimes weasel out of there and still look great. Like we still all thought he was the best wrestler ever, even though he'd get his ass kicked and cheat. Right?
Yeah.
And I'm not kidding you. When he showed up at so there's 13,000 people at this Portland Memorial Coliseum where the Trailblazers used to play. 13,000 people, and we all hate this guy. But when he walked out, it's like everyone stands up and kind of is quiet, like it's like the Pope just walked in the room or something. And then to the ring, you just start booing him. But it's like when he shows up with the belt, it was like the President of the United States just showed up, and it was something to see for sure back in the 80s. It's amazing.
Nice,
awesome.
Yeah. For me, I'm going to say it's Andre the Giant. The more I learn about the guy, the more I love him. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Awesome. Great documentary, too, about him, too.
Yeah, absolutely. And Young Rock does a really good representation of Andre the Giant, that new TV show.
Oh, really?
And, yeah, it's awesome.
Awesome. Well, thanks for joining us, guys. I mean, this is a great talk. It was great to get to know you. And great comic. I definitely recommend everyone out there to check it out. Look for their Kickstarter in May. And we'll retweet the links when it comes out. And I'm hopefully going to review the whole miniseries too for the channel at some point soon. So
great.
Awesome.
Sure. Yeah.
All right. Well, that's it for tonight. Join us again tomorrow, guys. We got another wrestling themed show tomorrow night, which will be amazing. So
you can hear the birds in the background.
Yeah. All right, guys. Till tomorrow night. Have a great night. We'll see you tomorrow.
Thanks, everybody.